Hey guys, this is the Ecran Rider here, and welcome to my first elemental countdown. Cryokinetics, or rather ice wielders, are one of the most unique and sometimes graceful and clean out of all the elemental superpowers. Ice is often accompanied by hydromancy, and do use other weapons to compensate, but this is all about those chilling factors. They're usually the most well-rounded and can always freeze, control their temperature, and shape their targets at will. And oftentimes they can have a strong build despite conjuring some slippery conditions. Considering I have a balancing issue, so it's best not to mess nor underestimate them. I know what you're all thinking right now. Didn't the Green Scorpion and Quarter Guy make a list like this? To that I say, yeah, Oscar and Adam has done a countdown like this several years ago, but there's a good chance my choices are radically different than theirs. And I'm not one of those snobs who are so analytical and state everything as fact. I'm more subjective, and I'm only here to have fun, not to be in a competition. And I'll try my best to limit to just ice aside from other factors as much as I can. No hypothermia nor ice pressure here, and what better way to embrace the wintry season? Let's break the ice here. Starting off the list and barely hanging on the slippery precipice is Marvel's Iceman, only known in Ultimate Alliance. I don't play a lot of Marvel games and I usually stick with the Fantastic Four, but he was interesting amongst all cryomancers. He was known as a runaway and became the youngest member of the X-Men. Unlike many ice wielders, he has a personality which is said to be lighthearted, easing very tense situations. I can definitely relate to him, as much like the other mutants, he's an outcast because of his differences, and the world betrayed him. Nevertheless, he still remained as a cocky though devoted hero, kinda like Johnny Cage. In Ultimate Alliance, James Arnold Taylor was a decent voice actor as him, excepting in 2. He has appeared many times as a playable character amongst others. He always complains in Mephisto's lair due to the endless lava and fire, which is a common setback to all cryomancers. His abilities are powerful but pretty basic, such as ice shards which damage and slow down the enemy upon the sheer cold, beams to freeze them directly and eventually shatter, Polar Explosion, which is a charged version of Ice Shot, and introducing the Ice Slide. In fact, aside from being abandoned by humanity, Iceman was the earliest cryomancer to date. He was one of the pioneers of cryokinetics, that many characters were inspired by him in years to come, each one sharing his abilities and character traits. He's also a member of the OG X-Men, and has been iconic ever since. And that's why he barely qualified for the top 10. Without Iceman, there may not be other individuals as talented as him. Oh, and he should be revered more since he's gay. Very cool. Remember in my Arctic levels list I mentioned Northwall, and that the Ice Wyvern was the star of its Christmas tree? Well, here we are. The Arctic Wyvern is one of the most iconic and difficult boss fights in all of ActRaiser, at least in my glazing eyes. I at first thought he was sculptured as a pterodactyl, and I was always turned on by his design and the way he sounds when he shoots those lethal projectiles at you. At Northwell's second act, after ascending the tumultuous tree of woe, it's likely the Master would have a bad time, especially with low HP. The Arctic Beast has two methods of attack, by either spitting out a few icicles which shatter into deadly pieces onto the snow-covered tree, or descending and attacking the Master with its sharp talons. It is most certainly challenging with melee attacks, so a few rounds of magic, most preferably the Stardust, shall strike him down. Oh, and it's best to be extra prepared in Death Team, where he has more speed, almost as blinding as a blizzard. It may not be much, but he's often dangerous as the last opponent before Tanzra, so be mindful while climbing up his fatal terrain, or dealing with the boss rush beforehand. Again, since ActRaiser has hardly been mentioned, and since the Arctic Wyvern has a sharp design and concept, he qualifies enough for this list. This was certainly an interesting choice. Primadon is known as the Ice Queen, or rather the Ice Ballerina because of her unique concept and style. She's a delicate dinosaur who spins rapidly like a ballerina does, kicking up snow and making stalactites descend as she closes in on Bonk. She happens to be the ruler of her icy domain, which suits her blinding spins and bone-shattering battle pretty well. She can be as tricky as navigating on real ice, if you don't know what to expect. When I was 4, I vaguely remembered her. I encountered her randomly, probably the first of my parents' mom-and-pop shops, and it's possible a customer gotten far. I kept seeing a dizzying boss in her spirals during one of the Bonk games, as I recognized the boss theme. I was so glad I was finally able to identify her more properly. Just by her elegant design and her shrill battle style has made it all worthwhile. You can tell King Drool was really pulling out all the stops, being that it's Bonk's revenge. Like the Arctic Wyvern, I was fascinated with her. I don't know why she's always so vain and such a sore loser and a bully when she got her legs snapped. You have quite the bitter and minty taste of nostalgia, style, and a great and formidable boss. I'm not too crazy about Bad Mr. Frosty, but judging on the fact he's the friendly snowman's evil counterpart, he just barely made the cut. Bad Mr. Frosty is exactly that, like the doppelganger of the kind Frosty the Snowman we used to know and adore. He's rude, crude, and tends to be obsessed with winter and the bitter cold. Rumor had it he was just a reanimated snowman within the park once he was exposed to the radioactivity by the Clayterian meteor and came across the circus tournament. He's proven to be quite the brute, aside from some painful projectiles, and all he wanted was to create a winter wonderland with the cost of the staff's safety while suffering from hypothermia and other ailments from the bitter cold. Bad Mr. Frosty is truly a heartless snowman you don't want to play with. Canonically, he never won, but was a decent combatant like Taffy. Heck, he just screams contrary as he was later arrested for assault, battery, trespassing, breaking in and entering among his other infamous crimes. To the point on beating up Santa Claus in the North Pole, and being in a maximum security prison encased in an ice block. Still, he became more wrathful upon his release, and he seems to be a lot more fearful than that snowman who resides in heck and breathes fire. Snap, snap.
Then Mr. Frosty wins the battle.
I'm tired, I'm cool, I'm no one to fool.
The ice climbers, Nana and Popo, were just too cute to resist for the list. Ever since Super Smash Bros. Melee, they've been one of my favorite fighters. Their OG game is entertaining too. We should get a sequel sometime. Their hobby is just friendly competition scaling any and every mountainous terrain and claim the summit, avoiding various obstacles and enemies during their trek, till they reach a vegetable-stealing condor. I don't know why it always tends to rob veggies, but my guess it's from their own harvest. The climber's cryokinesis is pretty basic, whether it be freezing enemies by blowing blizzards from their palms, or shooting ice blocks from each member. Their mallets cause their most damage to compensate with their frigid moves, and they always look cute doing it. I hadn't played much of their OG game, but I'm sure it was a lot of fun working with a partner in its co-op gameplay. They tend to be light and fast in the Smash Bros. Games, and I just love the buddy system, although I wish the AI could work out the kinks. With their basic ice-wielding abilities and camaraderie, aside from switching climbers depending on their parkas, I was glad Sakurai picked them over other potential NES candidates. The Ice Climbers were one of the best Smashers I've played, along with Kirby, Pikachu, and Yoshi, and that's just what makes them so special. Lest we forget one of the debuting mavericks on the list, Chill Penguin. He was interesting enough to make it to the top 5, and he was a robot with a rowdy personality and tends to give others the cold shoulder. Chill Penguin has often been bullied by other mavericks, most notably Flame Mammoth and Storm Owl, due to his little stature and weak skills. I kind of feel sorry for him on being jealous, to be honest, even to all midgets, as you would see in my Petites list. He was once a member of the 13th unit of the Reploids operating in the South Pole. However, due to its harsh climate, there was hardly anything for him to do. So one day, Sigma came to him and easily persuaded him to join his side as a maverick. While he was intimidated to his tiny physique, he still demonstrated to be a threat as he was capable of causing avalanches and destroying cities near mountains under fatal feats of snow. And X, of course, had to stop him. A lot of players would fight him first, as he's the easiest maverick to beat, and his battle strategy is pretty basic. Plus, it is a requirement to face stronger mavericks like Flame Mammoth. He also has the common moves like all other Cryomancers, such as Ice Shot, Blizzard, even Sculptures and Slide abilities, probably based off of another certain wielder I know. I was going to put Frost Walrus on the list, but due to him being a beginner's target, being one of the Mavericks introduced into the X series, having a banging theme song, and a bit pitiful for his stature, Chill Penguin was just a chill and distressing contender for the top 5. There are so many ice types to choose from in the Pokemon juggernaut, even more than I can count. Most of them are accompanied by another type, with about 97% of them being classified with water types. But this one in particular was one of the first ice types I instantly became attached to. Case in point, the first legendary Pokemon, Articuno. Articuno was very interesting, and for the first discovered legendary, it's not too shabby. First off, its name is a mashup of Arctic, meaning ice of course, and Uno, Spanish for one. It is indeed the first legendary and member of the elemental birds, so it makes perfect sense. Her design is fantastic, counting its wings, crest, and body, and I just love how it glistens like ice crystals, even when it flies, or even glows for awesome sky attack. I also love its cries in the games and in the movies, specifically in Pokemon the Movie 2000 and Pokemon Stadium. Besides, finding and capturing one is never easy, so it should be appreciated to have one on your team. Sure, it may not have good stats and strengths as well as Curums, but it really doesn't matter that much to me. As Waffle's Minion said in his top 100, a Pokemon doesn't have to have good stats. I just have to like it. And I do. After all, the Ice Bird doesn't get talked about often, not even on legendary lists. In fact, it's considered to be the strongest out of all its brethren, even in the anime, as it's capable of lifting one of Team Rocket's mechas. Besides, while it's known to control the weather making it snow, it's not as heartless and savage as the Ice Dragon, as it's known to save people's lives who are lost in icy mountains. Maybe you can do that to Link one day. Also, since Gen 8, she has her own altered Galarian form to compensate, as a psychic flying type. Her personality is more callous, her design's more radical, and she stays in flight with her new telekinetic abilities. While she freezes the air mid-flight, she still has that effect when her psychokinesis affects the victim's nerves. So they stay frozen regardless the element. And she always has great special attack and defense to boot. Overall, it was difficult picking an ice type for this list, but Articuno just fits instantaneously as her immobilizing. And considering hardly anyone talks about her on their Pokemon lists, it's not so hard to see why. Alright, I do count Kirby's copy abilities. It requires his entire physiology and molecular makeup to become and strike back his enemies. And it's no wonder there's the Pokemon Ditto, as it screams, "right back at ya." After all, it's better than Link, as he only uses one signature weapon than a transformation. Unless you count Majora's Mask or Twilight Princess. Despite avoiding that one hit, it never runs out, and they're awesome! Anyway, Ice Kirby is pretty much your everyday Cryomancer, ever since its debut in Kirby's Adventure with the Pengi energy. Kirby first utilized his useful Ice Breath to freeze other enemies on contact, and kick them to other baddies. But as the series went on, Kirby gains more and more class while in this form. It also gains more skill as it combines with any of Kirby's sidekicks, increasing its versatility, destroying special blocks, and ignores terrain in most games. Sure, it's remarkably similar as the freeze ability, but it seems to be more well-rounded. Rather than just immobilizing enemies and using blocks as obstacles, Kirby can team up with other buddies, skate, dash, sprinkle, kick, and other things like forming a snowman and being in conjunction with other elements like rock, fire, bombs, needles, and so on. There's just no way that Link can combine his own weapons with ice. Just shooting arrows using a rod and a frost blade that freezes spikes, platforms, and enemies with no assistance. While Kirby can do much, much more. And they don't consume magic either. That pretty much goes for all of Kirby's transformations, but Ice Kirby is one of the most iconic, without any worries of consumption, nor lose traction, and does more than the Hylian can offer. There is no possible way I'd ever exclude the Ice Emperor Shiva on the list. Along with Ifrit and Bahamut, she's one of the few summons to appear in all games in the Final Fantasy juggernauts, ever since her debut, like many others in Final Fantasy III. Just like Articuno, she does have the capabilities to freeze everything on contact, with her signature move, Diamond Dust. And she too looks elegant and packs a lot of brawn, so don't be fooled by her appearance. She happens to be one of the friendly monsters, so much so she even had families introduced in Revenant Wings. My first impression in Final Fantasy IV was when Rydia had her by default, which meant she didn't have to be fought to attain her. Unlike in the interlude where the fake Rydia attains her summon abilities from a frost beast, or being petrified and brainwashed by the Maenads in the after years. Shiva was proven to be an absolute brute in her 2 boss fights. Her frigid moves can leave powerful Blizzagas to the entire team, and she is very high HP. Believe me, it's worth to keep her around, especially if Yuna should use her in active battles. Even as Magicite granting everyone healing and bone-chilling moves. Even freezing an opponent's HP from rising in Dissidia, or causing a ring to freeze and shatter party members on contact. Or even changing into a motorcycle. Yeah, pathetic. She has always been a reliable summon regardless of the installment. In fact, she became so popular that once Cloud was introduced to Smash, she became one of the spirits in both Smash 4 and Ultimate. That is respect. Bottom line, Shiva has everything I want in a cryokinetic. It's a she's formidable, she looks and plays stunningly, she's versatile. Her looks can be deceiving despite her gentile appearance with the vicious frostbite. And only one other glacial kinetic shall beat her to the shattering punch. Alright, we finally counted down the top 9 most soul-shivering contenders. But before we get to number 1, let's give the honorable and dishonorable mentions a stunning display. I swear, in all of the ice gods, Sub-Zero was definitely first place in my book. Much like Scorpion, he too was epic. And also the other poster boy in all of Mortal Kombat. It's too bad he hasn't made the box art compared to his rival, but still, he's a chilling choice. He can perform every method of cryomancy imaginable. He can freeze his targets instantly by shooting out ice projectiles while making them slip, and even shatter them into pieces, even when he creates his own double. He can sculpture his own weapons, including an ice dagger. He may not have the same magnitude as Articuno by manipulating the weather, but I'm sure he has quite the radius. He can even ride ice slides the same way Iceman can. Sure, he's got other weapons to compensate like axes, clubs, and swords, but he's always well renowned with his frigid fighting styles and fatalities. While he's roughly a descendant to the legendary cryomancers of old, and belongs to the cold-hearted Chinese assassins known as the Lin Kuei, Sub-Zero became as sheer cold as them, yet still has a more special case. In case you don't know, I'm referring to Kuai Liang, specifically rather than Bi-Han or Noob Saibot. The younger bro of the OG ninja is the most iconic ever since Mortal Kombat 2. He has appeared in almost every game, as well as being more honorable and to some fans passive. He's more of a peacemaker than his older brother and more redeemable than he can ever be. He took the mantle after his bro was slain by Scorpion, although he always was prejudiced and blamed when he wasn't responsible on killing Hanzo and his clan, the Shirai Ryu. Hell, he was so determined to convince the heroes he wasn't a threat, and he risked his own life to convince his wingman Smoke to remember their deep friendship, while being mangled after escaping from the Grandmaster. In fact, ever since Defenders of the Realm, I was always turned on by Kuai, played by the late Luke Perry. Rest in peace. He was in hiding, but he was later successful in overthrowing the Cyber Initiative, and even tried to bring peace to Scorpion. It's too bad he was constantly the target of betrayal in terms with the combatants Smoke and Frost. The Ice Makers should have been the better selves, like in Mortal Kombat Reconciliation. Can't stress that enough. Unlike Oscar, he didn't cover him in other media. Kuai Liang kicks ass in Snowblind, where he starred in his own movie with Kenshi. And Annihilation. It's been a guilty pleasure, and you can't deny it's one of the best moments despite those errors. Even now I always get giddy when he fights Ermac as Scorpion. I wish he had a bigger role though. He was a great cameo in Shaolin Monks chasing after Noob and Scorpion, while also assisting you in the Wastelands, even creating a wall of frozen blood that's able to heal you! Sweet Elder Gods! Also, I always considered Kuai and Liu Kang as the odd couple, since Defenders of the Realm, as they're opposing elements but work so well together. Damn, I wish it can happen more often. At first he was suffering from dehydration by Shang's fissure, but later still, he relocated to the uninhabitable Arctica, aka the North Pole, and used the Dragon Medallion, a sacred amulet enhancing his abilities. And it took so much work and discipline that Frost's usage caused her to freeze to death, albeit temporarily. Unlike several of the known cryomancers in Mortal Kombat, Kuai's a lot more tolerant and humble than them put together. Especially when he finally escaped his robotic revenancy and made a peaceful truce with Scorpion. That's downright incredible. Sub-Zero II always has and always will be my all-time favorite cryomancer and version of Sub-Zero. And unlike Adam, I believe he has a personality. While starting cold-hearted, isolated, and bitter, to being valiant, brave, righteous, and a thawing heart to boot. He was the one who truly made a difference for his clan and the realms themselves. Everyone should follow his example. I'm the Ikran Rider, and Kuai Liang shouldn't necessarily take the title as Sub-Zero. He should be named Absolute Zero. And that is why he's my all-time favorite cryokinetic. His ice abilities, honor, wisdom, heroism, and thawing heart makes him the legendary Grandmaster and my favorite ice wielder of all time. And it shows you don't always need to be cold-hearted, like Bihan nor Noob, to be the best.